Hello YouTubers, I want to welcome you to another edition of Bargain Bin Gear. And in this action-packed episode, right, I'm going to discuss an ABY pedal. Okay, and not just any ABY pedal, a Morley ABY pedal. Let's take a look at it. There it is. This is an Morley ABY pedal. And basically you've got 3 jacks here. Okay, and the middle one is an in and out jack. So you would route your main signal, right? Instead of plugging into an amp, you would plug into this in the middle, into this pedal. And then the signal is then routed to either the A jack here, or the B jack output, A or B, and it's selectable by a foot switch here on the right, or A and B, which means that the signal that's coming in is basically split into an A and B, or it can come out of both. Now, how is that useful, and why is that useful? Well, I'll tell you why. There are several uses for this. Some people use it to switch a effects pedal in and out, or if they have 2 guitars, they can switch, from one guitar to another. But in this case, for me, the idea is this. Basically, I can run a guitar signal into 2 different amps. Okay? A and B. And I have quite a few different amplifiers. Right? And surprisingly, usually I just use one at a time. Right? And I think I was doing myself a disservice. And in fact, very often, 90% of the time I see people that have multiple amps, but they only use one at a time, And in fact, herein lies the magic of the Morley ABY pedal. And in fact, other ABY pedals. It doesn't have to be a Morley. There are several pedals that do this. But basically, you can combine amps, right? And in fact, that's what this video is about. And I've had very surprising results combining different amps. Everything from a little tiny Fender X2 15-watt combo amp combined with a deluxe reverb or a carbon 100-watt head into a cabinet, Combining amps gives you a much bigger, fuller sound, and takes the elements of each amp and kind of mixes it together. And it's very similar, to give you an idea, not just volume-wise, but a fuller sound, almost as if you were switching between a 1x12 cabinet and a 4x12 cabinet, or a 2x12 cabinet. Just a fuller sound. And so I started doing this, and you could split your guitar signal to go into 2 different amps, right? There are many ways of doing that. One of the clumsiest ones is to just use a little cable splitter. Okay? It works. It's kind of clumsy, and connection's not always that great, And this is a passive ABY pedal, right? In other words, it doesn't require any power. at all. Except if you want the LEDs to light up, then you can put a battery in it and you can get the little lights to light up. But basically it's passive, so it doesn't require any power. It's just splitting your signal. Okay, your main signal into these two different signals to go to two different amps. And for me, I often like to play in stereo. So I'm already using 2 amps just for the stereo signal. But if I had 2 of these, right, one for the left channel, one for the right channel, I could run 2 amps on the left channel and 2 amps on the right channel. Total of 4 amps. And they don't have to be the same amps. They can be all kinds of different amps, right? And you find some really, really find a lot of different sounds, and it really enhances your overall guitar sound. So, and what I found is that with the Morley ABY pedal, it's just a really solid sounding amp. It doesn't, that's what you have to be careful of, is that it doesn't mess with your guitar signal at all, before it gets to the amp. Okay, so I have one of these, right? They're pretty inexpensive. A new one I think costs $100, and if you can find a used one, between $40 and $50. So that's pretty inexpensive, and the sound quality is great on them, no problems. In fact, you can't even tell, compared to plugging it directly into the amp, you can't really tell a difference, whether it's running into the Morley first or direct into the amp. So I really like the pedal for that type of thing, right? And since I only have one of them, I went ahead and ordered a used Morley pedal. And I was all excited about it, and the anticipation. It was like Christmas Eve, and I was waiting for it to arrive, and it took quite a while, in fact. So it took about a week to get here, and the anticipation was overwhelming, right? I even told my friends about it. Soon I'll have the power of a Morley ABY pedal, a second one, so I could run in stereo and run 4 amps, 4 different amps, which would be quite something, sound-wise. And, well, I received the Morley, and guess what? It was a used one, and it didn't work! Oh, no. Oh. Terrible. I plugged it in, no audio, no nothing, and the switches were funky, if you like. They, sometimes would click, sometimes wouldn't click. Basically, the pedal was abused and didn't work at all and wasn't tested before they sent it out. So it wasn't, 15 minutes in. And I know what it's supposed to be and what it's supposed to do, because I already have one that does work fine. I've had it for 20 years. Literally. And it works fine. It's great. So, I returned the pedal, and they're sending me another one, and it's going to arrive tomorrow. Right? And hopefully this will be an actually working pedal, It said it was in great condition, whereas the last one was only in good condition. And it may have been good cosmetically, but it didn't work! Okay, so tomorrow's the big day for the second Morley pedal. And I thought I'd wait to do the video until I actually got both ABY pedals. But I think I'm going to do 2 different videos. So that'll be a separate video. Here we're just going to cover the Morley ABY pedal. So basically, instead of 1 amp, I can combine 2 different amps to play at the same time. Okay, and I'm not talking about stereo here. I'm just talking about 1 and 2 amps. And I've tried all kinds of different combinations, and I'm always surprised at the quality of the sound and the sound differences. Okay? And one of my favorite combinations is the little Fender Super Champ X2 and a PV Classic 30 little combo amp that has a 12-inch speaker, and the little Fender X2 has a 10-inch speaker. Now, of course, both amps you can run into cabinets, you know, either 1x12, 2x12, or 4x12, and get a much bigger sound, of course. But remember, we're not going for necessarily volume, though you could if that's what you really wanted, but more the quality of sound. You know, does it really make a difference running into 2 amps instead of 1? And we're going to find out here, though I already have a pretty good idea because I've done it. Alright, and I use the Morley ABY pedal. And remember, like I said, you can also use, you know, cable splitters, or a little jack, you know, Radio Shack used to sell. It almost looked like a headphone jack. And it was a stereo plug and then 2 mono jacks. And if you plan to do this, be very careful that you don't just buy an AB pedal. Okay, the Y part is very important. And the reason is, an AB pedal, you can plug your signal that you usually would plug into the amp right here into the middle jack, right? And then it splits it into A or B. But that's you can only use one at a time with an AB pedal, right? So that kind of defeats the purpose. You know, you can switch between 2 amps, but you can't get them to run at the same time. And so that's why you have an ABY pedal. And the Y part just means that it's A and B, not just A or B. Right, as is listed here. A or B, A and B. And that means that A and B, the 2 jacks, run together. Okay? So, first let's take a listen to just a Fender Super Champ X2 by itself. And this is running through the Morley pedal, but I haven't engaged the second amp yet. So let's take a listen to that. Alright, so here I have the guitar signal cable going into the middle of the ABY switch, and on A I have the Fender X2, just a little 15 watt tube combo amp, and you can hear it here. Okay, now let's switch over to B, which is the PV Classic 30. Alright, so I just hit the A or B switch, and now I'm on the PV Classic 30. Okay. Alright, now let's try both together. So I hit the A and B switch, and now we got the PV Classic 30 and Fender Super Champ X2. And mind you, this is not in stereo. Alright, these are both playing the same thing. So it's taking a mono signal to 2 amps, basically. And let's hear the difference. Much fuller sound. Also the PV Classic 30 right, you get the kind of low end of the PV Classic 30, but you get the nice reverb, you know, from the X2, Fender Super Champ X2. The other thing that's kind of hard to explain sound-wise and maybe it's just because the amps are kind of spread apart in the room, is a kind of space. You know, it's kind of like almost as if the guitar sound has a space to breathe, you know, compared to 1 amp. You can imagine what it's going to be like in stereo with 2 of the Morley into 4 amps, right? In stereo. And also when you add effects and those kinds of things, you know, so you get a really big sound. And just for comparison's sake, I'll play something here with both amps on. And now let's try it with just 1 amp. Here's just the Fender Super Champ X2. now just the PV Classic 30. Okay, and now both. So as you can tell, combining the amps is almost as drastic as playing in stereo, you know, and nothing says that, you know, the two amps have to be right next to each other at all. And in fact, if you spread them out a bit, you get kind of this stereo-like spread, or air, if you like, of the sound. Very interesting, and can't imagine what it would be like in stereo, and that'll be the next video, I think. Or at least I'll do a video on it. So I'm very pleased, and definitely going to experiment with different amps, combinations, and things. And I guess one thing to say is the volume. Right? Not only does it increase the volume, but you kind of have to balance the volume of the separate amps. Right? Kind of makes sense. As you would in a stereo setup. Okay, so that was just 2 amps and no effects except, you know, reverb from the amps, the built-in reverbs and things. But if you add pedals and things, it's really quite something. And remember, this is mono, it's not stereo. Right? Just running a mono signal into 2 amps. Right? So they're both getting the mono signal. And I mean, this may seem like a common sense thing of combining amps. But it's actually understated, really. I mean, I have friends, you know, that have multiple amps, but they only run 1 amp at a time. And they have never really tried combining amps. You know, and in fact, one thing that makes it quite clear is, I don't know if you remember, I think it was a documentary, a year in the life of Metallica or something like that. And there was Bob Rock, you know, was the producer of the Black Album, you know, and he was talking about recording, you know, the guitar signal, and mentions in that documentary, in the studio, he says, so what do you think, I'm paraphrasing here, what do you think, maybe a Marshall and a Mesa Boogie or something like that? In other words, combining amps, 2 different amps, right, to get a good guitar tone. And I would have never guessed how much of a difference it makes. You know, it's really quite something. And I have quite a few different amps, so I'm going to try to go through them and find out which combinations work best for me, you know. And at first I'm going to do it with 2 amps, and hopefully if the Morley pedal that arrives tomorrow, right, which I'll do another video on, I'll be able to combine 4 different amps, up to 4 different amps, and that should be really something, you know. So that will be very interesting to see what kind of difference it makes, you know. If I have any phasing issues or anything like that. And so far, at least with 2, you know, with just my 1 Morley pedal, combining 2 amps and then running just 1 amp on the right channel, because I didn't have another Morley ABY switch. You know, I didn't have any phasing issues or anything like that. but the different combinations of amps made a huge difference. So we shall see. Tomorrow will be hopefully what I had hoped for last week. You know, when I got the bum pedal, that was no good. I mean, that really was a shock for me. It just never occurred to me. You know, I don't know why, but, you know, when you order something used, you kind of expect it to work, you know what I mean? I mean, this thing, you know, not only did it not work, but I mean, it didn't even put out any audio whatsoever, you know? So these places really need to test things before they send them out. But we shall see. Right? I've given them another chance to make it right, and so we'll see. And lucky for me, they had another used one. You know, or, you know, if this one that doesn't work, you know, it's a used one as well, then I would have to end up buying a new one, you know, which maybe I should have done in the first place. We'll see. We'll see. I'm willing to give them another try. Now remember, I said that there's other ways that you can split signals. Okay, split a signal 1 into 2. But one of the cleanest ways is definitely to use, you know, the ABY switch. Okay. I also have, and I haven't tried it yet, and I think it'd be very interesting to see. And maybe I could do a video on that as well. And that is, I have an art mix split kind of little box. And this one is stereo, so you could actually mix, I think, or split the signal into 4 or 5, or maybe it's even 6 mono signals, you know, or it can mix them together, but I've always used it just to split things. So that's another possibility. I haven't really investigated that too much, and I just try to steer clear of the just the, you know, the cable split, you know, little adapter thing. It's just a not very clean way of doing things. For me, anyway. Yeah, it doesn't quite work as well. You end up with too many cables, and it's not very clean, I've found. You know, now maybe that was just me, but with the Morley, at least it's a real solid splitting of the signal, you know, that I like. And it sounds to me almost identical to plugging it into the amp directly, you know, which is very important. I mean, you don't want it, you know, to compromise your sound, you know, mess with your sound when you're hooking it up. Oh, that was my phone. All right. So there you go. There's the Morley ABY pedal. And when I get the other pedal, I'll do a follow-up video where we can actually combine up to 4 amps. 2 on the left side, 2 on the right side. That would be very interesting. All right, very good. See you next time. Okay, bye.